The letter that arrived too late. The morning sun painted the sky with soft shades of gold as Ethan Carter, a quiet 17-year-old boy, stood outside the small house where he had spent his entire life. The wind carried the scent of fresh flowers from his mother's tiny garden, a place she had cared for every day with endless love. His mother, Grace, smiled as she handed him his school bag. "Don't forget your lunch," she said gently. Ethan smiled back. "I won't, Mom." Neither of them knew that those ordinary words would become the last conversation they would ever share. The school day felt strangely long. Ethan couldn't explain why, but he kept thinking about his mother. During lunch he almost called her, but he decided to wait until he got home. As the final bell rang, students rushed outside laughing, but Ethan noticed several missed calls from an unknown number. His heart suddenly felt heavy. He answered. A calm voice spoke. "Is this Ethan Carter?" "Yes. I'm calling from City Hospital. Your mother has been involved in a serious accident." The world stopped. His backpack slipped from his shoulder. "No. You're mistaken. I'm sorry." Ethan reached the hospital minutes later. The white hallways seemed endless. Doctors walked silently. Machines beeped in distant rooms. A nurse led him to a small room where Grace lay peacefully, surrounded by quiet machines. She looked as though she were sleeping. Ethan slowly held her hand. "Mom." No answer. Tears filled his eyes. "You promised we'd eat dinner together tonight." The doctor quietly explained that the injuries were severe. They were doing everything possible. Ethan stayed beside her bed all night. He talked about school. He talked about the flowers she loved. He talked about the movies they still planned to watch. He hoped she could hear him. Just before sunrise, Grace slowly opened her eyes. She smiled weakly. "My little boy, I'm here. I'm sorry I scared you." "Don't talk like that. You're coming home." She gently shook her head. "There are things life doesn't let us choose." Ethan couldn't stop crying. "I still need you." She squeezed his hand. "You'll always have me." Minutes later, the heart monitor produced one long sound. Everything became silent. The funeral was small. Rain fell softly throughout the service. Friends placed white roses beside Grace's grave. Ethan stood quietly, unable to believe she was gone. When everyone left, he remained there alone. "I don't know how to live without you." The wind gently moved through the trees. It almost felt like an answer. Weeks passed. The house became painfully quiet. The kitchen no longer smelled of fresh bread. No music played in the evenings. No one reminded Ethan to wear a jacket before going outside. Every room carried memories, some beautiful, some unbearable. One evening, while cleaning his mother's bedroom, Ethan discovered a small wooden box hidden inside the closet. Inside were old photographs, his childhood drawings, birthday cards, and one sealed envelope. Across the front it read, "For Ethan, open only if one day I'm no longer beside you." His hands trembled. He slowly opened it. The letter began, "My dear Ethan, if you're reading this, then life has taken me somewhere you cannot follow yet. Please don't spend your days asking why. Sometimes life writes endings we never wanted. But every ending carries the beginning of someone else's story. Don't stop smiling because of me. Smile because I had the privilege of being your mother. Promise me you'll continue chasing your dreams. Promise me you'll forgive yourself for every moment you think you weren't enough. You were always enough. Always." By the time Ethan reached the final line, tears covered every page. At the bottom was one final sentence. "Whenever you miss me, look at the sunrise. I'll be loving you through every new morning." From that day forward, Ethan began waking before dawn. He would sit outside with a warm cup of coffee just as his mother once did. Each sunrise reminded him that love never truly disappears. It simply changes its form. Months later, Ethan started volunteering at the local hospital where his mother had spent her final hours. He wanted frightened families to know they weren't alone. Sometimes he simply listened. Sometimes he brought flowers. Sometimes he offered hope. The nurses often noticed how gently he spoke to every patient. One elderly woman smiled and said, "You remind me of my son." Ethan smiled back, "You remind me of my mother." Years passed. Ethan graduated from university and became a counselor, helping people who were struggling with grief and loss. One afternoon, a young boy entered his office after losing his own mother. The child sat silently, staring at the floor. Ethan gently handed him a piece of paper. It wasn't advice. It wasn't a lesson. It was a copy of the same letter his mother had written years ago. The boy read it quietly. Then, for the first time since his loss, he smiled. A small smile. But it was enough. That evening Ethan returned to the cemetery carrying fresh white lilies. He knelt beside the gravestone. I kept my promise, Mom. I didn't stop living. I didn't stop loving. And every sunrise still reminds me of you. As the golden light spread across the sky, a gentle breeze rustled the flowers around him. For the first time in many years, the silence no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful, because he finally understood something his mother had always known. The people we love never truly leave us. They remain in every lesson they taught, every kindness we share, every dream we continue, and every sunrise that reminds us love is stronger than goodbye. The end.